Welcome to this presentation on creational design patterns, specifically focusing on the factory pattern. In this session, we will explore the factory pattern and understand its role in object-oriented design. By the end, you will know how to apply it in your own projects. Let's begin with an introduction to the factory pattern. This pattern is a creational design pattern used to abstract the process of creating objects. Instead of directly instantiating objects, we delegate the creation to a factory class, which decides which specific class to instantiate. This allows flexibility and decouples the client code from the class being created. The factory pattern is especially useful when we need to create objects without knowing the exact type, or when the object creation process is complex. It centralizes the logic of object creation, making the code easier to maintain and modify. It's also ideal when you want to keep your client code decoupled from specific classes, enhancing the flexibility of your system. There are three main types of factory patterns. The simple factory pattern, where a single function handles object creation. The factory method, where an abstract method is defined for creating objects and concrete subclasses implement this method. The abstract factory, which provides a family of related methods for creating families of objects. Now let's look at some key benefits of using the factory pattern. First, it helps with decoupling. By abstracting the object creation logic into a factory, the client code no longer needs to know how objects are instantiated. Second, it offers flexibility as the factory can decide which type of object to create at runtime based on conditions or configurations. Continuing with the benefits, the factory pattern also provides centralization of object creation. This makes maintenance easier since changes to object creation only need to be made in one place. Lastly, it promotes extensibility. Adding new object types to your system is easier because you only need to extend the factory without altering the client code. Let's look at an example of how the factory pattern works in practice. Imagine we need to create buttons for different platforms such as Windows and Mac OS. First, we define a button interface that will be implemented by different button types for each platforms like Windows button and Mac OS button. Next, we create concrete classes for each platform's button. For example, a Windows button class would implement the render method to display a Windows specific button, and a Mac OS button would do the same for Mac OS. Now we create the factory button. This factory decides which button to instantiate based on the operating system type. In this case, the factory will create a Windows button if the OS is Windows and a Mac OS button if the OS is Mac OS. Finally, in the client code, we can call the button factory to create the correct button type based on the operating system. This way, the client code does not need to know about the specific classes of the buttons. It simply requests the button it needs and the factory handles the rest. To summarize, the factory pattern is a powerful tool in object-oriented design. It abstracts The object creation process decouples client code from specific classes and makes your system more flexible, maintainable, and extensible. It's especially useful in scenarios where the object creation logic is complex or subject to change. Consider using the factory pattern when you need to create different types of objects dynamically without knowing the exact class beforehand. It's also beneficial when object creation is complex or conditional, or when you need to cre- creation centralize creation logic. This pattern ensures that your client code remains decoupled from specific implementation classes. To wrap up, here's an exercise for you. Try implementing a button factory that can create a Windows button, Mac OS button, and a Linux button based on the operating system type. This will give you hands-on experience with the factory pattern and deepen your understanding of its real-world applications. Thank you for your time. I hope this presentation has helped you understand the factory pattern and how it can be used to improve the flexibility and maintainability of your object-oriented systems. Happy coding!